meetings of NEDLEC, so I was not sure whether to start by saying Amandla. Away too. Thank you, Program Director, COSATU President Zingiswa Losi, and thank you, Minister Nomakosa Zanameth, our Minister of Employment and Labor, for that introduction. I want to acknowledge all the presidents who are here and their delegations. I've already acknowledged President of COSATU, and the GS of COSATU is also here, President of FEDUSA, Godfrey Silamatsela, and the Secretary, President of NACTU, Pet Mpela, the Secretary, President of SAFTU, Musima Maredi, and the Secretary, and all other delegations who may be here with us, Director of the International Labour Organization, ILO, Country Office for Eswatini, Botswana, Lesotho, and South Africa, Alexio Musindo, Chief Executive Officer of Proudly South Africa, Eustace Mashimbe, and key partners and other stakeholders here present, ladies and gentlemen, delegates, comrades and friends, a very good morning. Last year in September, I had the honor of attending the 29th Annual NEDLEC Summit in a year that marked the 30th anniversary of South Africa's democracy. And this year, also now the NEDLEC itself. I'm equally honored today to have the opportunity to address the 2025 Annual Organized Labor School. The Labor School, the Annual Labor School, remains a critical platform for reflecting on the state of our labor market, addressing the challenges that we face, and charting a way forward for the workers of South Africa. In this regard, it continues to uphold the democratic principles enshrined in our Constitution, anchoring workers' rights and aspirations at the heart of our economic and social policies. Over the past 30 years, the government and NEDLEC have strengthened collaboration and dialogue, with NEDLEC continuing as a cornerstone of social dialogue and consensus building in our nation, playing a crucial role in advancing our collective vision for a prosperous and inclusive society. In 2024, shortly after addressing the summit, we lost two of the key drivers of the formation of NEDLEC and its development at those elementary stages, former ministers Tito Mboweni and Membatisi Ndladlana, respectively. In some ways, their departure represents the turning of the tide and the necessity for new ideas and ways to emerge in advancing the struggle and building unity for workers and advance decent work for all. Comrades and friends, over the past decade, South Africa has made significant strides in advancing workers' rights and improving labor conditions. In this regard, for example, the 2023-2024 Commission for Employment Equity's annual report noted that there has been a notable increase in the representation of designated groups across various occupational levels, reflecting positive impact of the Employment Equity Act. In terms of strengthening and protecting workers' rights, the Department of Employment and Labor has increased the number of workplace inspections in the 2023-24 financial year, exceeding its annual departmental target of 4%. This proactive approach underscores the government's commitment to ensuring compliance with labor laws and advancing workers' rights. For the first time in a year, South Africa's official unemployment rate decreased from 33.5% in the second quarter to 32.1% in the third quarter, marking a positive shift in our labor market. The government's collaborative efforts have led to the introduction of improved retirement packages and social benefits for dependents of labor union members, providing greater financial security for workers and their families. Dear comrades, we are meeting at a time when the world is facing a multi-crisis characterized by inequality, high levels of unemployment, climate change, wars, migration, urbanization, and the growing youth dividend. As a country, whilst there are changes in our economic patterns, we must admit that the pace of our economic growth and our development is protracted, or is a protracted one, and not performing at its optimal level. Whilst the country is trying its best to promote economic growth through the promotion of investments and infrastructure development programs, these efforts have not yet yielded satisfactory results. The current mooted closures and scaling down of production in the steel industry and some of the companies in the mining sector have resulted in significant job losses. Through our collective efforts, we have managed to develop collective agreed sector plans. However, all stakeholders of NEDLAC must bear the responsibility of facilitating the speedy execution of these plans for them to live up to our expected outcomes. This is evidence that we can do this. In the past 30 years, we have been working in unison to introduce policy programs aimed at ensuring that we create decent employment for the majority of our people. Together, we have created an environment for labor unions to practice their democratic rights as enshrined in the Constitution, the Labor Relations Act, and the other critical legislation that reversed apartheid policies, thereby introducing progressive policy interventions. We have also introduced the minimum wage and more recently the two-pot retirement system, as well as other policies that are meant to support workers and the poor. These and many other progressive policies are a result of our commitment to transforming the economy and society so that many who were excluded can meaningfully participate in this economy. In 2024, we celebrated further victories, including enhanced mechanisms for fair and equitable labor dispute resolutions, greater participation of women in union leadership, and strengthened labor rights enforcement. However, despite the progressive policy interventions we have introduced, we are still faced with the challenges of high levels of unemployment and poverty, as well as inequality. We are also faced with challenges of crime, gender-based violence, and corruption, as well as implementation challenges with respect to the delivery of services. The COVID-19 pandemic also tested the resilience of our labor sector and exposed vulnerabilities within our economic framework. It is through the collective efforts of government, unions, and the private sector that we were able to protect millions of workers' livelihoods, even in the midst of that adversity. Through navigating the effects of the pandemic, we were collectively able to develop and implement strategies that expanded access to the unemployment insurance fund benefits, cushioned workers during periods of economic disruption, strengthened workplace health and safety regulations, and preserved jobs in key industries through innovative wage subsidy programs. These measures not only mitigated the immediate impact of the pandemic, but also laid a foundation for a more robust labor market. Compatriots, the labor movement is and has always been more than just a defender of workers' rights, but also a pivotal driver of South Africa's economic progress. By advocating for better working conditions, the movement inherently promotes increased productivity and ultimately GDP growth. Collaborative efforts between unions and employers have fostered a culture of innovation, resilience, and a shared prosperity. For its part, NEDLAC has been pivotal in promoting economic development by engaging in social dialogue and collective bargaining. It is through these efforts that organized labor continues to contribute to protecting workers' rights, and the government has created a stable environment conducive to economic growth. Following the national elections, South Africa has established a government of national unity, which has agreed on the following policy priorities. 1, growing an inclusive economy. 2, reducing the cost of living. And 3, building a capable, ethical, and developmental state. In realizing these priorities, we must continue to create a social compact with labor, business, and civil society, as we have done in the past through NEDLAC. This year will present us with various opportunities. The first one, in the mid-year, we will host the national dialogue that is aimed at drawing from lessons from our past to shape the future beyond the NDP 2030. The national dialogue will take place in a year where we celebrate 70 years of the Freedom Charter, a statement of core principles that have and continue to shape policy in South Africa. The task of organized labor in this regard is to provide innovative solutions on how best to strengthen our economy, build social cohesion, and improve governance systems, placing the needs of the workers at the forefront. Furthermore, we believe that the national dialogue will shape our outlook towards and beyond 2055, a year when we will celebrate the centenary of the Freedom Charter. Our ultimate objective must be to realize a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it, black and white, as envisaged in the Freedom Charter. Indeed, this is the only way that we can realize a country of our dreams as charged by those who gathered in 1955 in Kliptown. Dear comrades, this session also takes place whilst the World Economic Forum is in session, where President Ramaphosa and other government leaders are representing our nation and advancing our stance on issues of global significance, specifically as these relate to our economic development as a key player in the global economy, specifically in the continent. This year, South Africa is hosting the Group of 20, G20, a first for an African country. The hosting of the G20 will assist us in putting forward the agenda for Africa's development, as well as the global South at large. Hence, the theme for the G20 is solidarity, equality, and sustainability. We are leaving nobody behind. We therefore expect that labor in South Africa will, through the Civil Society 20 representative grouping, contribute to discussions that will reshape the global agenda as we seek to resolve the challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, but also reframe and reposition global financial institutions towards social justice. Program Director, as we look ahead, it is imperative to harness the collective power of all stakeholders, unions, government, and the private sector, to ensure that South Africa's labor market is inclusive, fair, and globally competitive. We must address income inequality and improve the quality of life for our workforce. We are not merely fostering economic growth, but building a South Africa where every worker feels valued and empowered. Program Director, as I close, let us all recommit ourselves to the values of solidarity, equity, and justice. The labor movement, as the backbone of our nation, holds the power to drive South Africa's economic transformation. Together, collaboration and collective action, we can overcome the challenges of the 21st century and create a future of dignity, equality, and prosperity for all. Let me also say something briefly about an issue raised by Comrade Vavi during the briefing this morning, that organized labor is very concerned about austerity measures. And it's quite clear that austerity measures have, of course, led to budget cuts throughout government or government departments, and including as well the Department of Employment and Labor as well. I was told this morning that this NEDLAC annual school used to take 4 days, and now it has been reduced to 3 days because of budget cuts. We have agreed with the minister that we will have to look at this matter, but also we have agreed that we're going to need another meeting, probably a much longer meeting, where we can, together with organized labor, discuss how do we all pull together to ensure economic recovery. Because some of the challenges we face now is because of the fact that our economy is not growing as we envisage. I said to the leaders during the briefing this morning that yes, we have begun to see positive signs of growth, but for the problems that we are facing in South Africa, a growth of 1.5% of GDP will not help us to address our problems. We want to see a much bigger growth going forward to be able to address the challenges that we face. So in a way, austerity measures are a result of an economy that is not growing as fast as we wanted it to. But we note this concern from organized labor, and we are going to look at it, but we want to work together with you. I did indicate that in the coming week we will have the Lekgotla of the governing party, and the following week of the Lekgotla of government before SONA. And one of the things we want to do is really to drill down to this issue of inclusive economic growth. And really look at infrastructure and a lot of other initiatives that can really help us to grow, because we do see these positive signs. So Program Director, I'm happy that we will have this opportunity. The Minister will coordinate with organized labor to ensure that we have that meeting sooner rather than later. I'm pleased to see this unity of organized labor. I was looking at the theme, building unity of workers to defend labor rights and advance decent work for all. And I said to our leaders this morning that don't be scared about GNU. I know at the beginning there were many who were saying this GNU include those who don't have the interests of workers at heart. So we might see a reversal of the gains that workers have made over the years. And I said to them, no, don't worry, we are there. We are there, and we are going to make sure that workers' rights are protected. Don't be scared. Workers' rights will always be protected, even if we have the GNU. So that's what I wanted to assure you about, that please sleep peacefully at night and not be worried what will happen now. But I think the important thing is that with that meeting that the minister will convene with organized labor, we are going to ensure that we now fast track this issue of growing our economy. And I'm happy to have had the opportunity to be able to share with you some thoughts this morning. And I said earlier to the leaders that I like schools because I used to be the head of political education in the ANC in the earlier years. So I would have liked to stay much longer until later this afternoon, but I have to rush to Pretoria because there are some issues that the President has asked me to attend to while he is in Davos. But I wish you well with the school, and I'm sure, Minister, next time we will give ourselves time to attend the 3 days, but I'm told that there are days that you don't want us. I was told the first day is a closed session. You don't want us there. But where you want us, rest assured, we will come. We are looking forward to get very good results from this school and the schools that will be convened in the coming year. Thank you very much, comrades, for this opportunity. I'm happy to have had this time to spend with you. Thank you very much. Question, President of FEDUSA, that they continue to be worried about this matter. I was talking to the ministers who are sitting there that it's obviously a matter that we are going to have to go back to as we go back to our meetings in government to look at what can be done. I did say earlier on that the economy that is not growing faster is not giving us enough revenue. But of course, come back to this question and see if there is a way in which we can go around this issue and make sure that we have enough resources to get programs going that can create employment. So it's not something I think we can completely answer today and say this is what we are going to do exactly, but I think it's something that of budget cuts. The second question was about the GNU, that there are those within the GNU who are anti-labor, anti-workers' rights, not progressive, anti-minimum wage. We have made sure that as we get into the GNU, we don't allow for the gains that have been made to be reversed. That's the point I made earlier. I'm not saying that they are not going to try, but I was saying that because we are there, it is our responsibility to make sure that these gains, workers in the farms, agricultural areas. I know that the Minister of Agriculture is from the DA, and perhaps comrades are worried that suddenly something will be done there that's not in line with our progressive policies. We're not going to allow it. Because remember that we are a collective in the cabinet appointed by the President. So ministers are not allowed to come with their own policies. We've agreed there are priorities. There's a statement of intent. Yes, people can talk about their policies in their parties, but in the government, we all work in terms of the priorities of the government. So all the issues that are in the statement of intent now and the priorities, if you look at them, they are our progressive policies. And therefore, we're going to continue to defend that. The third question from SAF 2 was about global matters, common currency. We as part of BRICS are obviously part of that discussion. I know you said that Brazil is forging ahead and other countries. When is South Africa going to do the same? What is our position? Now, I will not be able to say today exactly when are we going to take a firm decision on this matter, because I'll tell you why. The South African economy is largely embedded on the dollar, very much so. So we have to be careful when we discuss this question, how do we deal with it? If you look at trade between South Africa and the West, the US, Europe, etc., those are the countries that we have very big trade with on a daily basis, and we pay by the dollar. So it's something that we will discuss. In fact, I mentioned this earlier on, that the new president of the US have already said he doesn't like what he hears about this matter, that we want to move away from the dollar. But we are part of BRICS. We will discuss it and see how we finally deal with that. But we will need to be careful as the leadership of the country how we manage trade, particularly in the West. Of course, in Europe, we use the euro. So the issue of whether we can immediately move away from the dollar and introduce a new currency is something that we may not be able to do at this stage. But we are discussing it. We don't want to collapse our economy. We need to make sure that we tread carefully. We would like to see countries, even in the continent, strengthening their own currencies, collaborating with us. So perhaps it's a matter that we should also shift to that meeting we are going to have, that the minister is going to convene. Comrade Shingangi was worried about sleeping peacefully. The point I was making earlier on was that there are a lot of comrades who are worried that the GNU is going to reverse our gains, as I said earlier. And the point I want to emphasize is that it is not going to happen. It is not going to happen. I know you made a point about the Bella Act. Yes, there were big fights there. The president asked me to chair the clearinghouse mechanism. And of course, there was a pushback there, particularly on the issue of language and admission in schools. But we allowed engagement, as the president said, well, I'm giving everybody 3 months. At the end of that period, we said to the president, implement the act. And as things are happening, the minister is implementing the act. We ourselves had to acknowledge that some of the things that we want implemented in that act may not happen immediately. For instance, the issue of compulsory early education for children. There are schools that are not ready with facilities and so on. But in the main, The president said, I am now implementing the act. Minister, start implementing and give me progress on that. I know that Solidarity decided that they are going to take us to court. We are, of course, going to defend. We're going to defend in court because we know that this policy is correct. This law is correct. South Africa has got 12 languages, and all of them must be used in the development of our children in our education system. As far as practically possible, they must be used everywhere in the country. So we're going to defend that position. It is a correct position. So we will see what the Solidarity says. The NHI. Yes, the cabinet has agreed that the NHI should be implemented. I know that on this matter we have also been taken to court, and we're discussing with the minister, and the minister is saying to me, of course, it doesn't mean if we are taken to court we must stop unless the court stops us. So it's going to be again back to the issue of increasing our pace of implementation on all the policies, including universal access to health care. So we're going to do that. In fact, in the coming Mahotla, these are the issues that are going to be on the table. And I know there are comrades who are saying, yes, there are a lot of good policies in South Africa, but sometimes, you know, the pace of implementation is very slow. In fact, in the presidencies, since the start of this 7th administration, we have, our theme there is the speed of execution. We want to make sure that all decisions are implemented speedily. So when we look at all these issues, we are going to treat them in that spirit, that there should be the speed of execution. The second question from Kosatu was on issue of local government. Now, local government in South Africa is a big challenge, to the extent that we have now dedicated a lot of efforts to it. Comrades will recall that the President introduced the district development model and assigned me to go all over the country to ensure it's implemented. And the good thing with the DDM is that you are able to pull all the plans together. We call it one plans. National, province, and local government. Instead of national government going to a particular province or particular local area and implement the project, we make sure that we combine those plans and resources with both province and local areas or local government to ensure that we move as one. So that is already happening. But I know that there is a big issue about the issue of funding of local government. For quite some time now, local government have been complaining about equitable share, that when Treasury allocates funding, they prioritize national government, provinces, and little goes to local government. And we know why that happened. Comrades will recall that at the beginning of the new government in 1994, there was a belief that local government can generate its own resources. So when government budget, they say, okay, particularly the metros, they'll say, look, well, the city of Johannesburg is so big that they can, through rates and taxes, collect so much money that national government doesn't have to allocate funds or funding to them. And yes, because there are municipalities that are dysfunctional. Some of them have no economic base. So to assume that they will be able to raise their own revenue becomes a fallacy now. So we have to go back, and I agree with you, comrades, that it means we have to review the model of local government. Because otherwise we end up intervening ad hocly. And we say, okay, let's intervene in this municipality, we're going to take it over. So that's not sustainable. We need to review that model. I agree with you to look at how do we fund local government, because many of them, I've been out there in many local areas where you really realize that, in fact, whatever you do, you can change mayors. I don't know how many times you lack of skills that you can attend to, because we are looking at that. Councillors that are able to do their work, engineers that must be appointed, paid. So this issue that workers are not paid and they don't receive their salary, some of them has to do not only with corruption, but the fact that there's actually no proper revenue base in those municipalities. But we have a program now driven by the Minister of COGTA that is looking at all municipalities, which one are functional, dysfunctional. We are looking at the report of the Auditor General. And already there are others that we are helping to be able to do their work. There are others that are lagging behind, but there is progress that is happening in that regard. The other issue raised by COSATU is whether do we need the national dialogue. Well, that decision has already been taken. So we are going to have a national dialogue. I think what we need to do is for COSATU and the other organized unions, organized labor, to be able to say, let's not have a talk shop. As Comrade was saying, we've had a lot of these dialogues. What you need to do, as I said earlier, you must begin now to say, in that dialogue, we want to achieve the following. We don't want to go there and regurgitate old ideas and come back with ideas that takes us nowhere. So we need to say, in this national dialogue, this we want to see agreed upon and implemented. So we have time, because as I said, it will be later in the year, and I'm making an appeal to organized labor to say, come on board. We have committees that are busy coordinating. In the presidency, that work is led by myself to make sure that we get to the national dialogue that is going to make sure that we achieve something. Because the issue of nation building and social cohesion, it's an ongoing matter. But we want a dialogue that is going to accept and agree that there is a problem of sorting out the economy. We need to ensure that we put in place or we consolidate all those pillars that are going to make sure that we grow the economy and create jobs for our people, particularly young people. I agree with those who are saying whatever percentage you're trying to look at, unemployment remain unacceptably high and needs to be addressed urgently. Fourth question, COSATU, I think I've already dealt with it. It was about the Bella Act. Comrades were saying we are not going to rest, we are not going to sleep. And I'm saying, my sense is that if we work together and pull together, we will be able to be reversed by anybody, and we won't be moved, whether it's solidarity, going to court. We will stand firm, like the comrades in the Northwest, when they speak, they say, Harisi Sinyech, Harisi Sinyech, Riemi Mo. We're not going to pull back, because when we entered the GNU, we said to everybody, this must be about the people. Everything we do. We even said, put aside your manifestos. Let's look at what is in the interest of the people. And if you agree to work with us on that basis, that the issue is an inclusive economy, is addressing the high cost of living, having a capable going forward. There is an issue about the Freedom Charter. Firstly, there shall be work and security. I agree that it's an important chapter in the Freedom Charter, or clause in the Freedom Charter, that we must make sure that we implement. The minister is coming back tomorrow and is going to engage more on the issues of collective bargaining. There was a view that some of the things we do in government, they undermine collective bargaining. And an example was made about the 2018 agreement. So she's going to come back tomorrow with much more details to look at what exactly are these issues, because it can't be government led by the ANC that really consciously take a decision to undermine collective bargaining. If that happened, it needs to be corrected, and we need to know exactly what we did with those agreements. So I won't go deeper into it, because the minister is coming back tomorrow to deal with that. Now, the issue of housing, I agree with the speaker that when we introduced the policy to assist poor people with housing, we said those who earn, I think when we started it was 3,000. I think it's probably a bit higher now. I don't know where it is now, but we did realize that there's a category of workers in this country, but particularly public servants, who earn beyond that cut-off amount. So they can't get those subsidized houses, or as we call them, RDP houses. But at the same time, they don't have enough, they don't earn enough to go to the banks and be able to get bonds to buy houses. Even with the social housing policy we introduced, we couldn't deal with this problem completely. What we did, because I was part of those who were in the human settlement environment, we introduced rental stock. When I was MEC for housing, human settlement in Gauteng, we introduced rental stock to be able to deal with this problem. But I guess it's true that if there are still many public servants who can't afford decent housing, we'll have to deal with it. because the rental stock that we built all over the country was an attempt to deal with that question, but it may not have been the solution that is working for us. Comrade Matthew raised the issue of there are a lot of progressive pieces of legislation that must go through Parliament, but sometimes ministers drag their feet. My office has been given the responsibility to make sure that as the leader of government business, we get these laws to go past Parliament so that they can be implemented. So it's something that we're going to deal with. I've written to all the ministers now to say, please, you have so many pieces of legislation. People were saying I should crack them. Now, you know, with elderly people, the whip doesn't mean you can beat them. But there may be other measures we take that will ensure that ministers understand that it can't be business as usual, because those laws are designed to change the life of people in communities. So we will indeed crack the whip. What we will do, I'll discuss that with the President, but we are going to make sure that ministers can't ignore this fact. But the reason why perhaps people thought we're not cracking the whip is because every time I remind ministers about this, they give me very good reasons why they didn't answer questions or why the bills are not being taken through cabinet quicker. And it's because some of them have many agencies that report to them. So these things, the bills emanate from this agency, they have to come to cabinet committees and so on, answering questions. They have to get information from various agencies that they are responsible for. But it's a matter that my office is seized with, and we're going to make sure that indeed we attend to. But as I said, the minister is coming back tomorrow and will attend to the many issues that that concerns you. And I want to still say, Minister, that I think we need to have that meeting where we're going to have enough time to deal with these issues, particularly the issues of the economy, infrastructure, skills in the country, to make sure that we build our own economy. But we are not an island. We'll continue to work with others in the continent, in BRICS, in the global south, but also where we have trade links in the West, we will maintain those trade links as long as they benefit our people. But we will make sure that our agenda remains strong as we go deeper into our work of leading the G20. I did say earlier that we will make sure that the G20 is used to benefit the continent. So it's important that we start working on that, but we're also going to use it to benefit the whole of the country. Many, when they host meetings of G20, they want to be in Johannesburg and Cape Town. We have agreed that the impact of G20 must be felt in all provinces, Northern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, Northwest, Free State. We can't have activities only in Johannesburg. There are meetings that will take place in Joburg, particularly the meeting of heads of states, but others must go to other provinces because they also bring a lot of tourism as ministers and other people come to the country. But we are going to make sure that as the leader of the G20, we do look at reforming the global institutions, particularly the financial institution, to benefit what we want as the African continent, not just as South Africa. So, Minister, what I have not said is yours. You can deal with tomorrow when you come, whatever I've left. But comrades, we will work together. The struggle is not over. Thank you very much.